The real reason you have low back pain. Your low back is shit. But that's more than an insult, and I want to tell you a little bit of what I mean by that. So one, this is an acronym because I'm cute. S stands for sensitive. H stands for hidden and imbalance. I, your low back is incredibly weak. T, your low back is tight. Your low back is shit, and that is okay because mine was shit too, and I'm going to help you understand why. So, first, I do want to explain why I think we've been lied to about the low back. It may not have been malicious or of bad intent, but whether on purpose or not, we were all misled about the low back in general. So second, I'm going to talk about what you can do for your shit back and what I did for mine to be able to go from re-injuring myself just tying my shoe to basically being able to put my back in reckless situations and lift directly with my spine, and I cannot injure myself. So bold claims, this may irritate you off the rip. I think if you give me at least 10 minutes, you're going to realize why this video is unlike any other back video you've watched. And so yeah, let's get into it. First, why we've been lied to. I'll just start with my experience because I think this is one that you're going to be able to relate to. I herniated my disc in 2019. I was 21 years old, too young to have back pain, and I was already in school for exercise science studying how to treat these injuries on my way to become a physical therapist. I worked at a physical therapy clinic as a tech. I would take people through the exact protocols that you're supposed to go through when you get hurt. I learned all of this stuff. Also, just so you know, we're in the kitchen of my home because I don't want it to seem like you have to be in a big crazy gym with a bunch of equipment to fix your back. So we're gonna keep it authentic. There's probably some dirty spots on the wall on the counters, just don't look at that. So if you hurt your back, you gave it 2-3 weeks of initial injury rehab, then you already are gonna be familiar with the stuff I'm doing right here. A bird dog, opposite arm, opposite leg, extending, learning to use your breath, embrace in the attempts of creating core stability. You go to the side, a sideline clamshell. You could have a band around the knees. Again, starting to use lateral forces on the spine with a little bit of your glutes and building lumbo-pelvic stabilization. You could flip to the opposite side. Bird dogs, opposite arm, opposite leg. Great stuff. None of it is necessarily bad. So when we start trying to fix the back in this way, that makes sense for the first 6 weeks, and it did for me. I felt great. My disc injury had healed a lot. I wasn't as sensitive as I was. I could actually stand up and walk, go back to work, and not have to crawl on the ground. But what happened when I went back to lifting and activities that actually really use the spine, I just got re-injured. So at first it was re-injuring off of a back squat, then a box jump, then I would re-injure getting out of a car, then I'd re-injure tying my shoe, and then if I sneezed too hard, I could get a re-injury. So basically this loop formed showing my low back vulnerabilities because I had actually never taken the back beyond a level 3 out of 10 of intensity. So this was something I went through when I was 21 to 24, re-injuring my back every 2-3 months, thinking it was just me. Now here's where it really got interesting was I just started sharing these stories online on YouTube. And really with the intent, hopefully, some young kid like me that might be stuck will find out there's something missing. So after posting for a year, becoming low back ability, and trying to educate on this just massive misunderstanding of the back, people started reaching out. And it turned out my rare story of this re-injury loop with the McGill Big 3 and all the other stabilization-based training was just not enough. And now don't get me wrong, there's value in it. I just want to make it clear so we don't get false statements on me. I'm not saying there's no value, that it's useless. I'm saying this is great from month 1 to 2, 1 to 3, after which you want to make the jump to sports, to normal life, full-on lifting. You're just guessing that you're not going to get hurt. And it turns out thousands of other people have been left off in this sort of mystery. So I was posting on YouTube and just being direct, because I'm not going to tiptoe around it, name drop the McGill Big Three, that protocol by these experts of these back sophisticated physical therapists. There's value in it and it works, but I think there's a big gap. So people of high affluence, really wealthy people, who could even afford to directly reach out to people like Stu McGill and train directly with them, would then reach out to me after finding my video and tell me, hey, after working with directly under the guy to perfectly learn how to brace, how to stabilize, how to use my hips and core properly, how to move and sit and stand and load the hinge so that way I never round my back. They got the expert advice and coaching hands-on direct by the guy himself. And then they come to me, and a college dropout who was just a 26-year-old kid who was also injured. They're like, I'm going to completely follow what you're saying because I know there's something missing. I keep getting hurt too. So I say all that not as a bragging thing. I say all that not to just call shots and attack, because that's not what it's about. There is something missing, and it's not just me. You could have the most money, get the best sophisticated treatment in this industry where something's blatantly missing, and you're going to be left in the same spot. So that's my backstory and preface and why I decided to make this video of why your low back is shit and what I think the real problem is. So I'm flipping through to my notes so that way I stay on track, because I have 1,000 tangents I could go on just from passion. So we already talked about something is missing. The traditional PT method is great for the initial rehab of an injury, but what about the return to actual life? That's where we got to look at this. Jordan, can you put 3 minutes on your phone? I have a timer. Jordan's here backstage, you know him. I have 3 minutes to break down what the core is and not draw this out too long. So if we're trying to fix the low back, and we show first the misunderstandings, to fix the low back, we have to look at what core training is currently described as. So you remembered all the stuff I showed, the bird dog, sideline clamshells, dead bugs, etc. Let's look at what the core is. So I'm going to draw a top-down view. This is you cut in half like a cucumber from the top. Here's the front of your core. Six-pack abs, right? Here's the obliques. There's two. And then here's the transverse abdominis, 2 layers. So we're going to draw that too. And then here's the special stuff that I focus on, the low back directly. So here's the spine column right here. Here's the spinal erectors, not to mention all the little muscles. Then you have the psoas. This is a crazy, crazy visual. And then you have the QLs. Looks like a weird flower. It's terrible. There we go. Okay. Jesus, this is rough. Spinal erectors, and I'm going to remind us and go over it. It's okay if it just looks like a first grader's drawing right now. Okay? So let's go over this. Oblique, transverse abdominis. You could pause it and look at this. The abs. So here's what's missing. When you go through stabilization training, maybe you have to zoom in on it. When you do something like a dead bug and you're lying on the back and using opposite limbs to try to create stability, we're trying to stabilize using the front. These 6-pack abs right in the front. A lot of us have done thousands of crunches in our lives, thousands of sit-ups. We've trained the abs. Then let's go to sideline clamshell. Here, and we're lifting through the side and trying to brace. Same with bird dog. We have this tipping, rotating aspect we're preventing. These are now starting to train this, the transverse abdominis. deep core stabilization. When you take a deep breath in a squat and you're trying to brace your body stiff, you're using this whole chamber, this whole barrel. So we train the abs, we train the transverse abdominis, we train the obliques, and you could even view the core a little bit more thoroughly. That's my 3 minutes. We're going to 5. The core is a barrel. So you could view it as having everything I just drew, but then also having a floor and a ceiling. No way this marker's giving up on me. So what is the ceiling? The diaphragm. Diaphragm. Then the ground here, pelvic floor. Right? So your core overall is this fixed chamber with a set amount of pressure. So when you do deep breathing and start to work on diaphragmatic pressure, building a brace around your body when you squat and go and squeeze tight, or you actually use a belt, you are working to stabilize everything tight through air, through the ceiling of the diaphragm, the ground of the pelvic floor. Air is what's stiffening this. Then when we do bird dog, side-lying clamshells, etc., we're training the front of the abs, we train the obliques and transverse abdominis. So we hit everything we could except probably the most important part, which is these spinal muscles. The muscles that attach to the spine. So what are they? This flower that I drew all weird. Here, the psoas. Here, the QL that attaches to the side. And then the biggest ones that have the most healing potential to the spine itself, the spinal erectors. Okay? Not an artist, bear with me. The point is to have you understand when you go through traditional PT training, we train everything except the actual low back itself. Any of the muscles that attach to the spine, we do not take to progressive further and further levels. So what does that mean is you get really good, I'm done with the breakdown. You get really good at bracing tight, picking up something like this with zero spinal flexion, moving like a robot. And what happens to the spine itself? It breaks down further in diagnosis like DDD, spondylosis, retro, modic changes, pars defect. Everything in the bone may go through more and more stress because you never directly built these muscles. So let's go through now, what can we do about it for your shit back? So that is the core. It is a 360 barrel with a ceiling and a floor. We already covered in traditional PT training, which has value, everything else but the low back spinal tissue. So that's all I'm gonna focus on. I'm assuming you're already doing those and you've gone through it before. Okay, so let's go back to your shit back. 1, it is sensitive. One thing I would lead you to do when you're dealing with symptoms is to ask why. Not just buffer or mask it, but ask, why is the low back sensitive? I'm going to give you 2 things you can do to work on it. Sensitivity is basically a pattern of pain, of breakdown, avoidance. Your nervous system gets used to having to feel pain when you use your spinal muscles. It might spasm, it might feel sore, but not in a good way, not in a bad way. It's in this gray feeling when you train your low back. We need to work on the sensitivity. So what do we do to try to decrease sensitivity? We're going to gain evidence. What that looks like in movement. First, this is going to be your bread and butter. You need to buy one. You need to find whichever one you want. The biggest question we get on my page is, how do I train the low back without a back extension? There's just no shot. You have to do 3 sets of 10 of Googling back extensions. That's the solution, honestly. So the first step that we're going to go to, in building evidence, it's like graded exposure. In physical therapy and psychotherapy, this term is used in both. Graded exposure. Take something that makes your vulnerability exposed, but find the level where it is impossible to lose, that you can handle it, come back next time less sensitive. So we need to gain evidence in the back that your muscles can fire and not spasm, fire and not feel pain. So we do that with tension, without any motion. Putting a timer down, you could start a clock and just start with 30 seconds holding this position. Simply holding a reverse plank. So this is building off of all the traditional PT you started with, but now we're mainly focusing on spinal tissue, muscles that connect directly to the spine. The spinal erector muscle groups are working here, as well as some of the smaller ones. So starting at 30 seconds is fine. You may have the muscular strength to do 2 minutes, but if you start with that, you might be in a flare-up for a month. So work to your tissue tolerance level, your sensitivity. We are desensitizing through exposure. Now, how do you make this easier if even this is incredibly hard? You can move the pad high. You can move it up and down, or actually you could even just, let me show it this way. You could sit at any position on this machine. You could have it up to your chest, and you are using the muscles to a lesser degree. You could start a super high pad for a minute, then slowly over time, move the pad lower to where it's at your hips until you can tolerate more and more force without any spasm. The eventual goal is to reach the standard we set for 2 minutes, holding here, and not just can you do it today, feel good tomorrow with a good soreness. Then can you repeat it 2 times a week? Over time, just through that contraction without pain, your body's going to rewire the neurology, the nerves that are running through your spine, as well as the muscles. Everything's going to develop. The tissue, the trust, is going to become less sensitive over time. The second side of it is the trap 3 raise. We can show a video of me doing it traditionally on a bench. I don't have a bench with me today, so I can do it on this machine. It's the same exact idea, getting tension through the spine. We're using our arms to help, but now this is the focus of the mid to upper back. We're going for spinal extension without motion in the spine. My back isn't rounding. My back isn't overly extending. I'm simply holding this position, but increase force here. It's squeezing like it's going to cramp, and I lower. This is probably not the first time you've seen it, but where it goes wrong for people is they think they have to start holding some crazy ass weight, 10, 15 pounds, and start to lift as if they've done it before. Your arms are not 0 pounds. Body weight is not 0 pounds. Me lifting here is 10 pounds each side. What you really probably need is to go on Amazon and get cute and get these little half-pound plates or 1-pound dumbbells and start incrementally increasing what you can do for 15 reps. This alone could flare you up if you're overly sensitive in the spine, so take it super slow. So twice a week, back extension hold. Simply start with 1 set of 30 seconds. If you survive that the next time, you go through and do 2 sets of 30 seconds. After a couple weeks, go for a minute. This is just the direction. I have an exact protocol on the lowbackability.com website, but truly you could figure it out yourself if you want to go slow enough and play the long game. For trap 3 raise, this focus on the mid to upper back. Start as light as you need. Don't worry about the weight. Work through 2 sets of 15. See how do you feel tomorrow. Are you sore? Is it a good soreness? Is it ambiguous? Listen to the feedback your body's giving you and act appropriately. This is a 3 to 6 month plan minimum. Ideally, you don't have to go through flare-ups along the way. Realistically, you might, but that's okay. You're learning. Your body's going to work with you and give you feedback. Don't mask it. Don't blame it. So that's sensitivity. 2, your low back is hidden in imbalance. So what do I mean by that? We're going to look, how does a low back injury become a full body problem? My experience which apparently is not too unique either. So I had a disc herniation on my L4, L5, L5, S1. And then over time I had a hip hike. Because of the pain that was on one side of my spine, most herniations go to one side or the other, I had an aversion to flexing on the opposite side. I had a herniation here, I did not want to stretch it out. So the way I would sit in a chair would be lopsided all the time. I would not sit normal, straight. I would try to avoid and protect that. The way I would stand would be a little bit leaning on one side all the time, on one leg. And over the span of 2 years, my hips became 1 to 2 inches higher like this. Now everything else I did, imagine, I'm still lifting. I would go to try to squat, what would happen to my hips? Some weird ass dance to the left. And now over time, that just led to more and more force in my hip, which led to a hip impingement. Every time I would go down to squat, sharp stab. Every time I would get deep, it's like a knife going in my joint. 3 months later, during lockdown of COVID, I got a sports hernia on the same side. I've looked this up. So many people in threads, in my Telegram chat that we have thousands of people, so many people have gone down this lineage of disc herniation, hip imbalance, direct hip joint issues, sports hernia. Someone's gonna comment and say that's exactly my story on this video. It's not that rare. So the imbalance that happens from your spine can go everywhere, up to the upper back, down to the hips. So that's how you can have it hidden over years. You can do the back extension, that's going to help you a ton. But imagine I only worked on the strength of my muscles in the spine and I didn't fix the effects of the injury every time I squat. Some weird force, my back is gonna feel different left to right. So let's look at what can we do for the imbalances of my hip. First, I'm going to give you the bare basics on mobility. Stupid easy, cannot fail. If you want a more thorough video on mobility, I've already done one. Hip mobility for low back pain, I'll put it on the screen. But this is going to be a flow that you cannot fail at. And we're gonna talk more about hip stuff later on, but we're gonna do first a split squat hold. You're going to pick a height below the knee, somewhere about mid-shin, put 1 foot forward, stretch the back leg out as much as you can, and just sit at the bottom and hold right here. And for people that are trainers, I already know what you're gonna say, I know what you're thinking. I am stealing from knees over toes guy, I am copying.
Joined our staff as a coach and now works with me running the ATG equipment.
But you may not know that we know each other.
And welcome to the KOT podcast. Brendan, how's it going?
It's good. In true ATG fashion, we just got done with.
And we have a long history. And I wrote the back ability program for the ATG app.
But Brendan runs our low back ability protocol on the app. So that's now like, how do you start getting into the lower back?
The first version of it. This is a community effort to work at the imbalance of our field. So it's all good if you're like, wait, no, I know that one you're stealing. Yes, absolutely, I'm stealing it, it's fine. So look, holding a split squat for 1 minute at the bottom, leg is as straight as I can keep it. I'm squeezing the back glute, squeezing the back quad. My front heel is staying on the ground. I'm not trying to worry about bending my knee to the max, letting the heel come up. I'm focused on the hip mobility. So we're gonna do 1 minute on each side. This low back problem, hidden in imbalance, can sit in the hips. So the first one, if you have anterior pelvic tilt, this is a whole controversial video. The entire thing is going to be debated. People say that pelvic tilt, which is the direction of the top of your pelvis, where does it point? If that's a relevant factor for back pain. When I had serious back loop issues and my back was shit, my hips were stuck anteriorly. I felt pulling, standing, and walking all the time. The tighter my hips got in the front, the more it would tip and pull my pelvis forward, and then my low back would take strain. This is argued that it doesn't matter, it's not causative, it doesn't cause back pain. I don't see a benefit of being so tight in muscles that it warps your skeleton and pulls. So this is our first approach, is a split squat hold, 1 minute on each side. This can progress to doing reps. I'm trying to give you the bare basics, easy, safe place to start. If you're very nervous, just hold actively 1 minute. Switch, 1 minute. Now, the second one I'm gonna give you for mobility, relevant to the back. If you've heard of SI joint pain, this is going to be very relevant for you. When you're squatting, a good test is how far down can you squat with your heels flat before you get a butt wink, which is the low back rounding. So as you're going down, at what point do your hips tip under you and around? I'm not saying this is absolutely bad or good, but being excessively tight on the inside of the thighs and the deep groin to where you can't squat without rounding, one, squats are going to become painful. The very low part of your spine into the hips, this SI joint, is going to take a beating. Two, even when you're not squatting, the tightness on the front bottom of the pelvis here puts excess stress on the exact opposite, the top back. So every bit tighter you are on the inside, it is literally a shared force. Everything is connected through fascia and muscles. It's going to be pulling on the exact opposite. And that's where I was getting plagued with my spine herniations. That healed up, but then my hips and SI joints did not. And it got worse and worse and worse. So the stupid, simple, fail-proof way we're gonna start is with a squat hold. So we just did the split squat for the hip flexors mainly. Now we're going to go use a slant of whatever height you want and sit at the bottom of a squat for a minute. You could pick how much elevation based on how much you need. The reason we're lifting the heels is just because if you can only go this far, it's not very productive to just do a floating air squat. We want to get deeper, but you cannot round the spine if you're trying to work on the groin. So we're going to elevate the heels, make it easier. You could even hold weight on both of these holds. Stay really tall. Active hold right here. Spine is vertical. Torso's taken out of the squat. And it will add up over time. So 1 minute here, letting the inside of the thigh start to stretch out, using your control of your pelvis that you started to work on with the big three and the traditional protocols. You should have a better awareness of your hips and spine. So here, push into your hips. Let your pelvis anteriorly rotate. And try to dig into the hips. Over time, this should be able to turn into a flat heel in the same position without a butt wink being upright. Once you've restored this after back injury, you have so much safety and security just through evidence that you could get back to something like squatting. Whether it's a goblet squat with weight, a front squat, a back squat, it's all just different variations. But hiding the imbalance of your back injury within the hips doesn't have to be complicated. We don't have to do 30 different drills. Let's start with the biggest ones that show the most glaring issue. So split squat hold, do this twice a week. 1 minute left, 1 minute right. Squat hold, 2 sets of 1 minute. Change the heel elevation as needed. This is the biggest way we can start on the inside of the thigh, the front of the thigh that's pulling on the spine. So next, of the shit back, your low back is incredibly weak. And it's not a mystery of why. So, first question I want to ask, whether you're in fitness or not, how many push-ups can you do? Jordan, how many push-ups can you do?
25.
You can only do 25 push-ups?
Without getting tired?
No, without getting tired. This is meant max. Wow, I expected more. Okay, so Jordan can do 25 push-ups. How many back extensions can you do? He's guessing. He's guessing. He doesn't know. There's no firm answer. He's going to say a number because he feels like he has to, but the point is I could ask you, how many push-ups can you do, male or female? Doesn't matter who you are. You know that you can do 20, or I can do 30. I can't do a push-up. You know how many push-ups you can do because we test it. If I ask how many back extension reps can you do body weight, you do not know because we don't test it. So when I say that your low back is incredibly weak, it's because we've gone our whole life having no measurement of how strong is your low back directly. So how are we going to be surprised that it's one of the first places to break down in society and we all accept it as if it's normal that we have back pain, but we've never gave it attention. Smells like bullshit in here to me. And we just did a deep clean. It's Monday morning, so we do a deep clean of the LBA office. It's not coming from the kitchen. It's some bullshit here with the fact that we don't train the low back, but then we just accept it as a societal problem. So your incredibly weak low back is not a mystery. The solution isn't complicated when you're pain-free. It comes very difficult once you're starting from an injured place, but that doesn't mean the route changes. So remember what we started with, back extension iso holds. This was just for desensitization. Wake things up without the alarm going off of a flare-up. Now when I want to ask, how strong is your low back? We're not guessing. I'm going to have you get on here, and you should be able to go through reps till your low back fries. So I'm going to go for as long as roughly I can, body weight reps. I'm at 5. And so now once we get to range of motion with the spine, there's no hiding. If you have an issue at your vertebrae and you are going through full reps where you let the spine decompress at the bottom and then you recompress with strength, you're testing segment by segment. I'm rounding my L1, L2, L2, L3, L3, L4, all the way to the sacrum. Now you can do it like I used to do it, the hip extension, which means keep your back stacked and just flex the hips, keeping this back pretty much like in a deadlift or squat. I'm not saying that's bad. You may need to start there, but the eventual goal is utilizing the spine and the low back muscles through range. So I think this is 18. I'm not sure. Oh, you start to get a low back pump, which if this is the first time you've ever had it, it's a wake-up call that makes you completely hopeful about your low back. You felt a bicep pump. You felt a quad pump. But you didn't even realize you could have a low back pump, and it's good. That's called flushing out the tissue and bringing a chance of circulation and micronutrients to the spine. I can't stimulate my spinal bones directly, not immediately, but I can stimulate the muscles that attach to the bones. I can get a crazy pump of blood flow on the muscles that sit on the bones, which give it stability and support. So I'm gonna say this is probably 37. Completely guessing. Could you put it on the screen? Good editor. Let's see. I'm gonna stop here so I don't collapse. But you should have a number that you know you're at. And then you have a goal you can work from, a starting point you can work from, and a goal you can head towards. I'm gonna go for 100. Okay. At this point, it's not a mystery. Everything I just did there gave me 1 ounce more confidence that when I would go to deadlift or RDL, that the chances of my low back buckling an inch and herniating something or re-injuring a tissue, it's so much lower because I know, literally at this point, when I do RDLs, the first thing to give up are my hamstrings, not even my low back. We could show videos of me taking it to failure. My low back won't give out because I just made it a strength. So the standard we've set for people to work up to is 30 body weight reps, slow, smooth, and controlled. You can start, like I said, with half reps with assistance, hold the handles, go down just an inch, and that's fine. You could do hinge reps, and not let the back round, that's totally okay. Eventually, you need to embrace controlled, deliberate spinal flexion. And it would be good to try to do the opposite on the way up. Extend like a progression from cat-cow, but now with weight. Not the starting point. That's the end goal. This is, again, a 6-month journey, minimum. Half reps for 3 months is fine. You should ideally get the holds to 2 minutes before you even start this without any problem. So know what your low back number is. How many reps can you do? Then when you see stuff on my page of me doing something like a Jefferson curl, where I'm purposely trying to only use my spine. Spine lifting, this doesn't seem as crazy because you saw what I built 90% of my strength from was that controlled back extension. So I've taken this to what I said in the beginning of the video, to reckless levels. I've done my body weight, 180 pounds, purely on the small intraspinal muscles, because what happens when you go deep, your low back spinal erectors, the big ones you can see, are working. Once you get to deep flexion, they shut off. They go into silence. This is why physical therapists say Jefferson curl is dangerous. I say it's protective, because what happens once the big muscles shut off, what lifts you back up? God? Is it the wind? What happened? If you're down here and the big muscle shut off, but you obviously can get back up, something has to be doing it. It's the intraspinal muscles. The multifidus, interspinalis, rotatorus, let's put them on screen. These small muscles create vertebrae by vertebrae spinal stability. What would prevent a disc from shooting out? Trying to keep your back stiff as a board so there's no chance? Or should you be able to round, be in the wrong position, but you have the microsecurity of every little muscle around the spine? So that's where the shift came from, trying to protect the back to build the back. If you live in a life where the back is something to just be afraid of and preserve, and you don't directly build it, you're just one wrong step away, or you're one wrong sneeze away, or one wrong twist. You can't be careful enough to avoid a flare-up in that life. So we need to get to 30 reps, work the big muscles, and then eventually go to deeper ranges. It's all a progression. Jefferson curl might be 2 years away from now. But after you get your 30 reps, you should go to deeper ranges of back flexion to really continue to stress the small stuff at a progressible, manageable amount. So your low back's incredibly weak, but it won't be forever. Lastly, your low back is tight as fuck. That thing's about to snap every time you bend over a little bit, twist, move wrong, your low back is tight as fuck. Before I make this video 2 hours long, I'm gonna make sure this is pretty short and on point. Again, one thing I want you to get from watching this content is the discernment to not blame the symptoms, but to ask why. So, tightness is a symptom. You can imagine this in a whole bunch of ways. Just in the body, one natural mechanism that the body does whenever it's stressed or feels unprotected, it tightens. If you get in a bad position with your back, you reach for something, you get a muscle spasm. That is your muscles clenching on and squeezing super tight. You entered a bad position for your body, doesn't have the evidence. It's like an alarm system goes off. It all clenches up and tight, and then you seize up and fall like the videos I post about. That's your body trying to protect you. It doesn't have the trust that you've done enough in your spine that you could just like bounce weight and around and do stupid stuff twisting, and it wouldn't hurt. So the second you get in that area, the muscles are going to squeeze and be like, stop, and that's a protective mechanism. It's pretty available, it's pretty present in a lot of different areas of the body. Tension is something we understand. If you're chronically stressed, you get tension here, tense, tight. If you're in a position your body doesn't feel safe at, spasm, tense, tight. If I splash cold water at you, you're gonna go like this, tense, tight. If you think I'm gonna hit you and come in and about to punch the camera, you're gonna be tense, tight. Like, it's literally the intrinsic reflex of your body to try to stiffen and tighten. So instead of spending every morning only working on the symptom of tightness, this is the type of shit. This is that stuff. This is where I realize I can't retire yet as low back ability. It's people join the group chat, genuinely asking this question, meaning well. Hey, Brendan, I've had years of disc herniation, had years of re-injuries, I actually had a surgery, my back is always tight. Is it okay that I'm doing these drills every morning? Hugging my knees for the tightness, doing this weird little airplane twist of the spine because it pops really good and it gets the tightness. Maybe popping a leg up here and stretch the tightness that just keeps happening. And I hear them ask this and I'm like, how many weeks in are you on the back extension? And they're like, the back extension, what's that? And I'm like, oh, fuck. Oh my God. So there's such a misunderstanding about what tightness is. It's not the enemy. Tightness is a byproduct of what? Your body does not have any trust in the neurology, your nervous system, and in the tissue. Because it doesn't trust you, it is tense all the time. So when you try to stretch something out, your outer hip, your piriformis muscle is tight, stretch, what happens? It might loosen up for an hour, and then it just goes right back. Because there was nothing convincing about taking a sensitive tissue, yanking on it, and then seeing what happens tomorrow. It's just going to go right back because it was tight for a reason. So we need to disarm that mechanism. And the way I would refer to it again, drill this in your brain, we are building evidence. If you've had 5 years of pain in your low back, you can't just stretch it out and think that's enough evidence. You need months to years of building your low back, teaching it. Yeah, you got injured. Yeah, you kept tweaking it and flaring up. I've learned the back is just scary and needed to avoid it. New evidence, equal but opposite direction. We are strong in the low back. We can get a pump and that's fine. We can use the muscles and not spasm. We can get sore and it's a good thing. Your body's listening. It's not even mental. It's your nervous system and the connection to the mind muscle and everything in between. So tightness, you don't even have to stretch sometimes to get relief of tightness. Sometimes it's helpful, but it can't just be something sensitive. It's like a rubber band that has all these tears in it and frayed. You ever seen a rubber band that's really old? What happens when you stretch it? You just see all the tears even more, and you're stretching a sensitive, torn out tissue. That's what happens with muscles that have tears, that have poor circulation. The fatty infiltration and the muscle's all weird, like the tissue changes. So let's get circulation and let's contract it. Our examples of this. Let's go to relevant ones for the back of tightness. Something that can really affect sciatica, this is not a new one, is stretching the outer glute muscles and piriformis. Now, a traditional approach, you go to PT, stuff I was doing, is you'll stretch it and see if that releases it. What else could you do? You get a lacrosse ball or a tennis ball, put it there, then you stretch it, get it really stretched out, the sensitive tissue that has no strength, no trust, never been pumped up. It's just crying for help and is tight. Well, you stretch it, yank on it, and put a ball and just dig into it and bully it to like, all right, release. And that's the problem with active release therapy when you still don't stimulate appropriately that tissue. So I would have some sciatica that would lead to TV static and numbness down my hamstring. I would do some of this, feel like it helped for 20 minutes, come back tomorrow, it actually felt sore, but in a bad way and even tighter. And then I would just go right back and be in this loop. So what's the evidence that's going to convince it otherwise? Let's train the area directly. So outer hip example. I coined something, I'm not sure if I'm really the first. Jordan, let's make sure we get the trademark if I am, for outer hip drop set. Let's go into the short range position of this. The opposite of the stretch, right? If we're trying to stretch this, we're gonna put the foot inside the knee and yank. Let's do the opposite. Completely reverse it. Squeeze the muscle in the shortest range like a bicep. Lift up, internal rotation. Just spend time at this toughest position for 30 seconds. So you're going to hold. It's gonna start to burn. It's gonna feel like it's cramping. You might even need to start easier, which means lying down away from the knee. Your back may not feel comfortable being upright. That's completely fine. The better you get at it, you're gonna be able to turn towards the back knee and be more upright. But my foot is off the ground. Just want you to be able to see that. Internal rotation, 30 seconds. Then immediately you're going to go into internal rotation with this abduction. Just means you're rotating and you lift. So now we're isolating slightly different muscles in the outer glute. Again, 30 seconds. Easier is lying down and away. Harder would be upright towards it. Eventually, having no hands with the foot up would be a great standard for this step. Keeping 90 degrees front knee, 90 degrees back knee. Burning like hell right now. Insane pump. Last step, you go to the elbow and then hold that leg straight out. So it's only abduction, zero rotation. Holding that foot high. I'm not on my back lifting, I'm purely on my side. Trying to rotate the leg actually a little bit in. 30 seconds here. So by the end of this, your glute is on fire. And you could do this test where you pump it up and immediately go back to the stretch that felt iffy. Same position, I have blood flow rushing through. It's squeezed up, it feels intense. Now when I go to stretch, it's different. It's just different. You can literally feel more protected to push on it. You don't feel like you have to go as hard cranking, but just holding this, it feels like a safer stretch, and it is. You have the protection of a pump. So in the short term, it's a better idea to do this strength than stretch, or you call it squeeze then stretch approach. Train something in the shortest range, like a bicep curl, I would do just here. Super pump up, and then get on the wall and do a big stretch. If you only stretch because it's tight, you're missing that tightness is a symptom. Ask why. So outer hip drop set. Again, can do 2 sets twice a week. Well, Brendan, what if I can already do that? There's a lot of women that have just different levels of hip mobility off day one. Progression. It goes further. I got 2 pounds, 3 pounds in this little ankle weight. Strap it up on the ankle, get right back into it, and restart as a beginner. Killer, killer pump. 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds, kick out. Got a back extension on my neck. Okay, we gotta talk about it. Look, I have other shoes, but when I wear barefoot shoes, I mean it, barefoot. Just mind your business. It's called a mechanical drop set, where basically you do the hardest variation first, then easier, like you do shoulder press, straight into incline, straight into flat, all with the same weight. It's essentially this. That is the outer hip tightness we can work on. Last one I'll say, we could just also go to back extension. I understand the feeling of relief you get by just hanging out here or wanting to do those knee twisters, wanting to stretch out the spine in this crazy twisting, contorting way because it feels good. But it's like, you know what also feels good? When you crack your knuckles. Now what happens? You crack your knuckles again tomorrow, and you crack them twice a day, and they're still sore. You crack them 3 times a day, 4 times a day, 5 times a day. You go to a chiro, get shifted, you get adjustments twice a week. You start to abuse the soft tissue and joints because you're skipping the muscular side where you're supposed to be strong. So this isn't bad, but if you can't even do one back extension, why are you twisting, contorting the bones when there's no protection of the muscle? So I would urge you, as much as you can, to resist all the Band-Aid relief tools. all of the like deep stretch, deep relax, it feels good in the short term and it does nothing for you long term, you're just treating symptoms and not getting to the root cause. So if you are going to do any kind of flexion for relief, I would take the same squeeze then stretch approach. I would first start, some mess in here. Small New York City apartments. Back extension iso hold. Do a lighter set. Don't treat this like your normal training session. If you've gotten to reps, that's fine. Still do a hold. If you really want to stretch out the back, do 1 minute. Get a little bit of a pump. Wake up the muscles first. Get everything in the short squeezed range that we talked about. It's not stretched. 1 minute. Okay, I got a little bit of a back pump. Things feel a little protected. Now we can go to something like an elephant walk, which is controlled flexion of the spine, but now you have some pump in the back where it's not just guessing if the discs are going to hold, guessing if the bones are going to get irritated. You have a really good feel and sense right now and a swelled up effect of the muscles. So if you go, I start with 2 legs, simply floating through this increased tension of the spine. When you extend the legs, a few things happen. One, the nerves get stretched that run all the way down the leg to the disc root, basically. When you straighten the legs, everything's getting pulled on. Also, when you straighten the legs, it's pulling all the connective tissue and fascia right at your sacrum and your spine. So eventually, of course, this progresses to different levels. I would start 2 legs for 30 reps, all the way until about 6 inches off the ground. Once you get to being able to tolerate 30 reps with 2 legs almost touching the ground, then I would say it's pretty safe to start doing 1 leg. Because the 1 leg elephant walk puts more than 50% force on one side of the spine at a time. You're literally popping out the hip in a certain direction to make that happen. So one-sided back injuries can really get exposed in that. I would start 2 legs. Again, this is just a masterclass blast of things to work on, but the principles are what I want you to take home from this. The squeeze, then stretch, is a much safer approach than just yanking on a chronically tight, sensitive tissue. Ask your body why. Why is my back sensitive? Why do I have imbalances all throughout my hips after back injury? Why does my back feel so incredibly weak? And why is my back tight as fuck? When you ask these questions, the answer is usually not the relief tool you're using. It's not the Band-Aid. My back is tight because I don't stretch enough. You stretch 3 times a day on these little dinky Band-Aids. That can't be it. It's got to be a different answer. Why is my back sensitive? I take painkillers. I'm taking GABA. I'm taking these nerve dulling affecting medicine. I'm getting corticosteroid injections. I'm doing everything I can to dull the pain. Why is my back sensitive? Because those things are not it. You're just literally blowing out the smoke, but the fire's still there. It's never going to work. So your shit back is temporary. It will only last as long as you try to use avoidance and Band-Aids as a tool to fix it. Now, to circle back, I came in hot with some shout outs and some name drops in the beginning. And I don't want to say again, I'm just being extra thorough. There's value in that stuff. I am a formerly injured back sufferer. And that's why I come in with this sort of energy, just being clear and unapologetic. That shit did not work for me. And I was a physical therapist in training, working in clinics, taking people through it, studying exercise science in school. I literally knew the whole theory top to bottom. It did not work when I got hurt. So unless somebody has climbed the mountain I'm trying to climb, I'm not going with them on that journey. Even if they're a mountaineering expert and they went to school, there's value there. I'm not saying that these people are not experts, but I think widely the industry is missing the next steps. So we've learned how to get people out of acute, immediate back pain, but we haven't prevented the chronic cases. Back pain cases are going up in society. It's the #1 cause of disability. It's almost just a thing of age, we call it. And I think the biggest culprit is the idea of avoidance being a solution. You can never avoid a problem and expect it to just be mysteriously better over time. It's like I remember being dead broke, and I would never want to open my Chase app. Like just naturally, I would want to avoid checking how bad my problem is. And it never made it better, ever. And you are in back debt. And so the idea of avoidance, if you never round your back, you could never hurt it. I gotta be careful every single moment of my life. You might prevent the debt from getting worse, but you're never gonna fix it. And odds are, life is just too dangerous anyways, you're gonna get in these flare-ups.
Oh, great heavens!
So avoidance will never bring you back. It can only prevent it from getting worse. And this game is so tricky, of a sensitive area that's become your whole life focus of trying to fix this, and it has so much fear and pain associated to it. Just go slow. Make a 2-year plan for you to fix your back and expect a little flare up, but in the long game, it doesn't matter. You're trying to build evidence. It's investing. 5 seconds on a back extension hold is an investment. Rest aside for today, you did a good job. That's it. And a month from now, maybe it's 15 seconds. This is about sticking to laws of philosophy that you understand. I can reverse engineer any problem that has slowly gotten worse over time, and I could do the opposite and try to slowly make it better over time. So build the evidence in your body, play the long game. Hopefully this convinces you to give up the Band-Aids as much as you can. You gotta do what you gotta do. Take a Tylenol if something gets crazy. I'm not trying to be, dogmatic about just suffering and pain, but make a plan that makes sense for you. And then whether it's a year, 2 years, you have a different kind of confidence that isn't just in, fix your back in 6 weeks, guaranteed or money back bullshit program you see online that I've just seen thousands of because I did them. So if you need help, we do have a shameless plugin, the lowbackability.com site. It is a roadmap of all this stuff I just showed. It also has a killer community. We got thousands of people in the group chats, all at different stages of the rehab, and it's community-led. I'm not even the most active in there sometimes. There's so many leaders of people who have overcome way worse back injuries than me that may be able to help you if you're coming off of a specific thing too. So that's pay what you want. You can sign up for any amount that you want. It's a monthly subscription. But honestly, you can figure it out yourself as well if you just want to pull gems from here. Take the philosophy of training the back directly, very slowly, very methodically. And yeah, just play the long game. Do not buy into the quick fixes. Don't buy into the fear. You got your back for your whole life, so you got your whole life to fix it. Appreciate y'all. All the best. Peace.